Hello, baby!
Yeah. Hello, baby is right. Thank you, Sammy. That intro was Sammy Hagar and the Van Halen Boys from the 5150 album from 1986, I do believe it was. I remember having it on LP. Strangely enough, kids these days actually know what an LP is again. Show them a cassette tape, mom and dad, or better yet, show them an 8-track. Yeah, that'll freak them out. So, we're going to call this interlude number 2, as I'm not yet back on track with my ACOA characteristics thoughts that could go on for 2 more podcasts, he says, because he knows that both of them are practically in the can. Or it could go on for 10 more podcasts, at which time you would be more than sick and tired of hearing me say ACOA or adult children of alcoholics or children of alcoholics. So I'm going to try and break that up. But I wanted to touch on something today that hit me while I was leaving a bass guitar lesson last night. It doesn't seem like there's any rhyme or reason to it, but every other week I come away encouraged, and on the off weeks I come away from those lessons discouraged. And, sometimes things just seem overwhelming. And I always liken bass guitar or anything that I do, I always kind of liken it to my recovery. It's like this is an overall process. This is a journey, okay? And some weeks it's going to be a pain in the ass, and other weeks it's going to feel like, yeah, all I need to do is apply myself and I can do this. Well, the thought that hit me as I was leaving the lesson last night is mental and emotional issues, addiction issues, all of these feed into how we see ourselves. And usually how we see ourselves is a far cry from the way we really are, a far cry from what others really think of us. A lot of our defeat is self-imposed. I always use the example that, to male friends of mine, that seems like they can't carry on a relationship with someone who's healthy. They have to find somebody who's needy. It's like they don't want to be intimidated by a strong-willed, successful woman who has it together. They want to constantly be rescuing someone from something in order to make themselves feel bigger or better or like they've got it more together. And I guess I can see the appeal there, but here's the downside to that. There are plenty of men and women out there that will put themselves, due to their mental and emotional state, into precarious situations, if not dangerous situations, because they need to be rescued. That's where they find their validation, is in being rescued, in the drama of it, and some of them will create their own scenarios. And you can see this by someone that you're constantly saying, I had to go save such and such from doing this, or from being stuck there, and then when you start digging, you start asking questions, because it seems like it keeps happening to the same person over and over and over and over. It's like there's no end to the drama. There's always some random drama comes up. Well, I'm here to say that a lot of that drama in a lot of those situations, I don't believe is random. Now, there are plenty of people out there, and I experienced this in my earlier life, that every time they do something that irritates, aggravates, or frightens you, you look at them and go, what are you thinking? And I'm talking about adults here. Or, how did this happen? And they look at you like, well, what? You don't think I did this on purpose, do you? Well, yeah, about half the time. I think there's something subconscious going on there. It's not something that someone sat down with a steno pad and started writing out, here's how I'm going to put myself in a dangerous situation and then prove my own validity as a person by having someone rescue me. But when you start seeing those things over and over and over again, you can almost say to yourself, it's like, wow, you kind of create your own drama, don't you? And I think that's true. And it falls under the category of self-fulfilling prophecy. And you hear that a lot in recovery circles. You might hear it a lot in mental health circles. I haven't spent as much time in the mental health aspect of it, but just the stuff that I'm reading, I'm telling you, there's a lot of things that when you say the word recovery, you can apply to almost anything in your life, from substance abuse to mental health issues, all the way down to I'm not very well organized. Recovery is kind of an all-inclusive word that can be contracted or expanded depending on how we want to see it. In my mind, recovery can take in a lot of area. So as I was leaving my bass lesson last night, I started coming up with the idea of, you can defeat yourself pretty easily. And all of a sudden in my mind, I started coming up with examples where there was no reason to be fearful, or as a term a lot of us are familiar with is waiting for the other shoe to drop. I started coming up with examples in my head of times in my life where I was fearful and waiting for the other shoe to drop. Something's bound to go wrong. Oh my God, if I heard that once, I heard it a million times in my childhood. It's not necessarily the words, but it's the sentiment. And I mentioned different aspects of that in previous podcasts where I'm talking about aim low. Don't stick your head too far up out of that foxhole or you're going to get it shot off, kind of a thing. So I started thinking about, okay, well, times in my life when I've been fearful of the other shoe dropping, and in my mind, there's a lot of these thoughts that are just automatically there. They come to your mind in a blink of an eye, so you don't always get a chance to put a term or a word or a sentence and tag it with that. But if I had to tag that feeling inside me, it would be, this can't last. Something's going to go wrong. How long until this falls apart kind of thinking. Something's bound to go wrong. And it's not something that you live your life by on a conscious level, but subconsciously, that's what I think self-fulfilling prophecy is. I'll give you an example. When I was in high school, and I might have used this already. If I have, forgive me. I'll make it quick. When I was in high school, I was taking driver's education, and the teacher had me, driving around and doing the classroom work and stuff, and he had a brake on his side of the car. In the old days, you used to see the cars with 2 steering wheels. Well, we didn't have that. You were in the driver's seat and you were ready to rock and roll, and you're going down the road. And what he had on his side was a brake. So his brake pedal could override your brake pedal, and that car is going to stop. I was getting on the freeway one day. I got to believe I was probably 16, and I started to get on the freeway, and as I'm on the on-ramp, he's basically telling me, you can't get on the freeway at this speed. And I'm like, well, I'm just in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm trying to ease my way onto He's like, no. You got to get up to the speed of the traffic. Punch it. And he didn't use the brake pedal, obviously, but he stuck his foot across the cab of the car and jammed his foot down on top of mine in order to accelerate the car so that we could get on the freeway at freeway speed. Well, I'd never done it before. I'm just, And of course, I'm a little defeated in this and that. And on the way back, he tells me, he says, you've got to stop driving around as though you're looking for an accident. Because if you're looking for an accident, I promise you will find it. That's self-fulfilling prophecy. That's, if I worry about this to the exclusion of doing anything else, it's all I'm going to focus on, and I'm almost going to find a way to make it happen. And it sounds insane, but alcoholism is insanity. Before they had the actual labels, yes, I said labels, for our mental challenges and our emotional challenges, we were just called insane. We were just called crazy. We were just locked up in a room, and that was it. Okay, so in a broad sense, it's all insanity. Life is insanity in some people's minds. And I agree for a great extent, because there's chaos and you have to seek order, not the other way around. And I don't mean political order. I mean order as in your own head. If we took as much time governing our own thoughts, feelings, and emotions as we do trying to manipulate the world around us, we'd be in much better shape, I believe, as a society. But that takes us down a road I don't feel like going down right now. So I've always remembered that. If you look hard enough for a wreck, you're going to find one. So that's an example of self-defeat. Oh my God, I'm going to get in a wreck. I'm going to get in a wreck. Now you're going too fast, too slow. You're not paying attention. You're looking at everybody. Oh, this guy's sneaking up on me. That guy's going to come over into my lane. And the next thing you know, you overcompensate and you end up getting in a wreck. Well, what does that sound like? Sounds like anxiety. Okay, well, I didn't even know what anxiety issues or a panic attack was when I was 16. As I've said before, that was a diagnosis that didn't come until I was in my 20s. And, come to find out, people around me had it while I was growing up or had something similar to it when I was growing up in my family. And no one ever said anything about it. Of course, back then it was take a Valium and go away. So another example, self-defeat, self-fulfilling prophecy. This one is, again, something that never happened, but it was something that was on my mind. First time my wife and I bought a house was in 1999. We bought the house, everything went great. We hadn't even had plans to buy anything, but we did, and everything just fell into place. I remember sitting on the side of the bed one day, actually putting my shoes on, speaking of shoes, and I remember being just anxious and apprehensive and this and that, and finally my wife asked me, she says, well, what are you thinking? And it's always really difficult to put our feelings into words sometimes. And the only thing I could come up with is, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. She goes, what do you mean? I said, everything is going so right. I just can't believe that something's not going to go wrong. And again, nothing ever really happened. There's plenty of stuff that goes on in life, but you can't sit there and go, every time something goes wrong, see, I told you, we bought a house, something's going to go wrong. I also have that thinking in my family too. Family of origin is what I mean when I say that, not my current family. But I had this feeling for weeks, if not months, everything's going to right. Years later, the first time I said I'm gonna quit drinking, I did that, and I think I was going about, I want to say 7 weeks. I had never really bought into, I did on a conscious level, but on a subconscious level, I doubt that my mind had really bought into the idea of not drinking for the rest of my life, which is kind of weird because the only time you feel like that is when you're still drinking. Once you've quit, I've been sober I've been sober just over 9 years, and I don't sit around and go, I can't drink for the rest of my life. Are you kidding me? I don't even think about that anymore. But that's something I don't believe you're going to feel until you have some sober time. And that means taking steps of faith every single day and saying, no, I'm not saying that. That would be the perfect goal. But what I'm saying is, I'm not drinking today. Okay? So we bite off much more than we can chew. And that's part of the reason we get overwhelmed. Stop thinking in terms of the rest of your life. Start thinking in terms of this week, this day, this hour. But that's what I did. I made it about 7 weeks, and I'm sure I was thinking somewhere along the line, oh my God, I can't keep this up for the rest. Can I keep this up for the rest of my life? How am I going to pull this off for the rest of my life? Never once thinking, the rest of your life can end tomorrow. Stop worrying about that. Worry about today. But it was about 7 weeks later, and I got seriously pissed off at something at work, and I was like, you know what? No one's going to tell me what to do and what not to do. And I came home with a six-pack, and I put it on the counter, and I said to my wife, I said, this is not the beginning of anything, but I need a timeout. And of course, drinking was time out. Because like I say, I was never much of a crazy alcoholic staggering around out acting the fool. I was not even a binge drinker where I would just, go off and tie one on and disappear for 3 days and that kind of stuff. I know that's very common, but that was not my thing. I was much more controlled. Yes, let's use the word controlled. We'll try that. Functional. But eventually, after 7 weeks, what's the bottom line? Let's go black and white for a minute. Take the color screen off and go black and white. I started drinking again. That's the bottom line. Is I fell off the wagon, whatever you want to call it. But I gotta believe, especially the further in my rear view mirror that experience is, I gotta believe that I had never really bought into it all 100%. I wasn't building any tools. I wasn't building any tools in my toolbox. I wasn't doing anything to continue to move down that path and to walk up a set of steps. I was basically sitting on the second step on the staircase and standing there idle, doing nothing, not working on anything. But again, self-fulfilling prophecy type stuff. Well, everything up to this point has been things that, not necessarily life or death situations, right? The driving analogy, that was a lesson, but it didn't cost me anything to learn that lesson. The house analogy is more of an example of the mindset that had already been cultivated, to be in fear of losing, be in fear of things being taken away, and being in fear of something going wrong. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take it to the next example in the next episode, which is losing my only child. Not that she passed away, she's very much alive, but I'm going to show you how the same thinking can create a lifelong issue when you're separated from a child. See you next time.
Opening and ending music by Van Halen. The song Good Enough from the album 5150. Background music by Incompetech.com. This has been a production of AudioRising.com 2016.